Oh goody, we start with this. Yeah, good news, it's the plumber, although he's clearly voiced now by Jim Ward for this occasion.
How about you?
And this battle looks like it's going to take place in the shower room.
Yeah,
Oh.
showers have been
Oh,
unusually.
1 second, please.
Here's the problem. Some idiot turned this off. Give me a hand with this, will ya? Well, that was less than
And that prompts a fight, I guess.
Well, looks like my work here's done.
Okay, technically did something. And yeah, by the way, we still need the cutscene about getting a new weapon.
So this implies that they.
I guess you can
we'll
argue
beat
it
you up
was a
later."
flashback happening right before this, I don't know.
I mean, it's like you've said. The placement is. Wait, what?
Because they got 2 different weapons, Jova.
I might be suspicious of
Again, basically the idea is that you get a cutscene for each new weapon that you get.
That is neat and all, but this is one of the rare circumstances where it might have saved them trouble if they had just,
Alright.
had a
I'll
generic
just mention it
package.
for the sake of, getting this out of the way. No, you do not get the drop the soap type of joke, thank God.
Oh my god.
It's still just
That's
a matter
it.
of... The entire joke is that everyone is in a towel, and if you actually use a physical attack, the towel goes off, and the enemies, and both Ratchet, in case you actually are hit, are having comedically black sensor bars, which you can actually remove by jumping into one of the laundry baskets. The special type of context-sensitive buttons that you have in the arena are more about like flushing things away or drawing them up.
You know, at
Yes,
this rate,
'cause
Ratchet has had so many weapons smuggled to him, he could probably just escape at this
Remember,
point.
the enemies are also having that. It's clear this security prison does not give a shit on that. Go on, Liz.
That's because you ever since I saw the Shawshank Redemption stage play, anytime something like this comes up, I'm like, ooh, oh boy.
And to be honest, Liz, I still have to find an iteration of that that is actually funny because... Oh yeah, by the way, one weapon that I got in the meantime, the Metamorphosis weapon, which is unique actually for this game. It's a bomb launcher, probably in order for the sake of streamlining the process, that turns enemies into pigs. So good on them for also not recycling the Mutator from the previous game.
Mm-hmm.
They're very adorable. And of course, if you actually maximize it, you will obtain the upgrade of the first transformation being an enemy that actually damages the others.
I love how these goons proceed to take it out on us instead of going after the plumber who was the one who actually caused the problem.
This also gives me time to mention something quickly. Because I didn't mention, Size Matters was actually also, sadly, the last major hurrah for Ratchet's original VA from my country, Simone Andrea. Because, again, as I said in the first game, after that he basically tucked tail and moved back to Rome, where he started voicing instead major AAA movies, theater releases, and commercials instead of sticking to anime and video games. He got back to voice Ratchet in the movie, but that's basically out of a technicality because the movie was dubbed by the School of Rome, and they already have him, and by the way, he's the only returning voice actor for my country's dub for that movie. But, so that begs the question, was the guy that they got in his place for this game any good? No. He tries, but he really doesn't fit the character. And this is just his only major game, appearance in terms of voicing Ratchet. Ever since Tools of Destruction, Ratchet gets voiced by someone else completely, which is technically better than this, but it's not the same as the original one. It's actually a big loss for the general cast for my country's dub, unfortunately.
I love how firing the ice weapon makes it so that the sensor bar is transparent, so you can see there's clearly no actual naughty bits below it.
did these games get a Portuguese dub?
Yes, Dwebs. Starting with Tools of Destruction, the Ratchet and Clank games have always had, because again, now starting with the PS3 generation, every single PlayStation first-party game always has a
Didn't
Portuguese
these two
dub.
actually had it? Because, like I said, I distinctly saw that in the initial screen, they also have your country's flag. So I don't know, is it just text only?
I'm guessing. I think it's probably just text only then.
And they use
If
probably
that's
the
the case.
Brazilian dub, I guess.
No, probably just kept subtitles and that's it.
We're not sure what the Kingpin's plans
Anyway,
are,
we're at
but
the
unlike
junkyard,
Kingpin's,
which means
our
also we're
players
going to
have
meet the
a
Kingpin
huge
again, in
channel
case you
at
were
disposal.
wondering, Drova.
We're guessing it's not gonna be good.
Oh
Investigate the
yeah,
situation
because
and
you know they mentioned earlier that's where his hideout is.
And this is where I argue the Clank main levels start to become a bit, creating a bit of fatigue, because this is where the point where they start becoming, longer and longer and longer. Not as much as but it's better than you think, but worse than you would hope. I argue that was like when Antonio and Force Rocket had managed to reach a better compromise, but these last batch of levels have a tendency to drag. Thankfully, there are checkpoints in between, so even if you die, it's not too much of a loss, but it's more the case of having to do it as a track. You can kind of tell, once again, that this was actually aimed for a portable console, because it's more of a case where you can stop at any moment, and then reprise it later to finish the rest of the track.
Yeah. See, basically the guy who's now the Portuguese voice of Ratchet, he's the PlayStation Portugal regular, actually. He did additional voices on Infamous. He also did two as well. I'm guessing probably the other ones. Yeah, Festival of Blood
is
and
the DLC of 2.
yeah, and he also let me see. For Resistance 3, he did Tommy Dean. There you
Okay,
go.
if you forgot the Elvis lookalike.
He's also the Portuguese voice of Spectre from Ape Escape, by the way. Resistance Burning Skies, but it doesn't say who he did in that.
That's the beta game, I cannot help you for that.
Oh, he's also the Portuguese voice of Sir Galef Cooper from Thieves of Time, from Thieves in Time too.
Okay.
So there you go. Oh, Killzone Mercenary,
That's the
additional
beta
voices.
game.
He was General Bull and Sir Fuchsia from Puppeteer.
Okay.
He was Corey in Beyond Two Souls. He was Nikola Tesla in Order 1886. So yeah, as you can see, PlayStation
He gets
Portugal
around.
gets this guy a lot, as you can see.
Yeah, again,
he-
I can see that because, like I said, it's similar to what my country did for a long while by sticking to the School of Milan for a while. Again, these days, Sony pumps a lot more money for exporting stuff, meaning that we do get technically more varied stuff, not just necessarily just Rome. So that's actually not too bad.
This entire organic mass must be a single entity.
Jova?
It's a bit of a shame that it sounds like the original Ratchet VA felt that he had to trade up. I'm like, okay, for all our faults over here, you still see a good amount of overlap with actors who make it big, but
Okay,
still come back to their roots.
I guess I have the time to actually explain, because there's a lot that's going to happen. See, here's the thing, Drova, because I never really talked that much about. I wouldn't even call them internal politics, but how things go in the panorama of the VAs in my country. I wouldn't even call it a mafia, but it is strictly regulated by a group of families, I would have to say. You know how the whole thing about, you get hired if you have talent? You have to think instead, in this case, like the stone cutters from The Simpsons. Either you descend from one of them, or you get to marry one of them.
Oh, so it kind of helps you have connections, basically.
Yeah. Thankfully, these days they seem to have, become more lenient, and it seems that they are able to hire fresh blood, even when it's not connected to the big families, even if you don't have connections for that, which I appreciate. But it's never a particular guaranteed. And when it comes to the different two schools, Milan and Rome, there's the fact that there's a bit of elitarism where Milan, like I said, is seen as the more expendable and thus easier to assign projects that people don't particularly care about or don't consider very classy, like it includes also video games for the most part, aka the ones that do not get that much budget, while instead Rome gets to have all the shiny, more prestigious type of projects like AAA Hollywood movies and so on. Like I said,
And the two cities dare never mix.
Sometimes it happens, but it's more of a rarity, and like I said, this causes problem on the long run. For example, again, while I am happy that Sony is actually willing to pump a lot more money for export to have more variety for voice actor and anything, this caused problem, for example, in the God of War Norse saga, in which for the English dub there is the case of Christopher Judge replacing TK. I forgot the name of Kratos' original VA. Again, although the two actually have met, they're actually perfectly good chums about it, so it's nothing particularly personal about that. But the point is that for the English dub there was only that. For my country's dub, because it was assigned to Rome instead of Milan, they changed everyone. And it is kind of a problem because the Norse saga involves a couple of returning characters from the Greek saga. It's in context, and I will not spoil about that, but believe me of that. And they get different VAs too, they do not sound even closer to the ones that they got in the previous games.
Wow.
Again, it is unfortunate, but keep in mind, like I said, on the long run and for original projects that, have a fresh start of that, I argue it works out a bit for the better, because to give an idea, because I never particularly talked about that until now, and I had an occasion to re-listen it again recently. Normally, when From Software actually releases a game for Bandai Namco, they do not bother with voice acting it in Multi-5. I think at best they get French and German other than English, but that's kind of it, and I'm not even sure about that. However, for Bloodborne and Sekiro, respectively, they actually did that. Now, with Activision, I have to expect that they never actually give a particular budget, so I don't even consider that. For Bloodborne, it was basically the turning point, so it was mostly assigned to Milan, which I argue suffers a bit, because while some voice actors actually tried, a couple of the others, as much as they're fine on their own and even in other games, do not manage to recapture the kind of particular solemnity that From Software VAs tend to actually have. If you have played any of Dark Souls or even see like a lore video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The kind of somber, theatrical kind of tone that the British VAs actually did. And unfortunately, it's not fitting that much. The Demon Souls remake, however, because it had that kind of budget, instead was assigned to a more varied group, meaning that it did actually manage to get people who could recapture that. So, again, it's a mixed bag, basically.
When it comes to recastings in media, generally I tend to wait to find out what the reason is. I mean, hell, even after that, sometimes it could turn out, as we found out with, it's not related to a recasting per se, but I'll just say, when it comes to, say, Cloud, for example, let's just say I recently lost a lot of sympathy for Steve Burton.
That being said, though, that
what
was
do?
not the reason he got recast, though. Like,
Yeah, I know. I said that.
Wasn't there the whole cheating on his wife, too?
That's
thing?
a Takedo Sakurai, the Japanese one.
That was Cloud's Japanese one.
Now, if I recall correctly, Steve Burton also did that, too, at some point, but...
That
okay,
I don't,
granted.
That I don't know, but...
And honestly, two weights, two measures.
But damn, I do feel really sorry for fans of the of the character Cloud, because damn, you have the misfortune of being voiced by two shitty people.
Okay. Now, remember, Jova, like all of the voice actors got replaced for the remake trilogy, so I get the feeling it wasn't because of that. It was just a happy coincidence. So basically,
that's
quite
what I
possible.
meant.
Considering Steve
Still
Burton's
was
recent.
terrible that we lost out on George Newbern, though. But I digress.
Oh yeah. Obviously. I still think George Newbern is best English Sephiroth. I'm pretty sure that's unanimous, isn't it? I've never heard anyone say it was.
I mean, it's not like we
Okay.
have that many alternatives over in the remake one, just Lance Bass. So.
I will say this. My overall stance with the casting is, for those who were terrible people and got replaced, that's good. My frustration is just that most of the recasting came from Square kind of wanting to do more of a Hollywood-esque cast. Which, okay, don't get me wrong. It worked out in a lot of cases. I still don't get why they felt they had to replace George Newbern. He was...
Well, again,
okay.
the mentality behind that Jova was to replace everyone. The only character in Rebirth that has a reprising VA for the English dub is, well, Gilgamesh, and you know very well the reason why is that. But otherwise, it was a case of all or nothing. So that's probably why they did that with different results, obviously.
Most likely what's going to happen moving forward is they're probably going to start using Cody Christian for even the other non-remake stuff, probably.
They already recycled some of the lines, some of these lines specifically for some of the gacha crossovers, not Ever Crisis, but stuff like War of the Visions.
Which in the case of Cloud, how not even counting what's been going on with Steve Burton in real life. After hearing the voice clips of both of them, I much prefer Mr. Christian.
It's funny I bring up the Steve Burton thing because in actuality, in a recent custody hearing, it's actually his wife who may have cheated on him, given how their separation was due to the whole, the latest child not being his and all that. Yikes.
So many things that I wish I would not be able to care about.
You can still think he's a shitty person, but damn, no one deserves to be cheated on like that. I mean, damn.
The Portuguese voice of Clank, on the other hand, he's also a PlayStation Portugal regular. He was Kraken in Puppeteer. He was Ryochi Cooper in Thieves in Time. Going back quickly to the voice actor of Ratchet, his most recent role at PlayStation is the voice of Genki from the new Insomniac Spider-Man games, Miles Morales and now 2. Miles is the guy in the chair, in case you don't know.
Did your country, I guess so, because, still Sony probably, did your country got a specific dub for Concrete Genie?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we did.
Yeah, again, I guess it was more, formality to ask, but just to be sure.
Oh, it is a first party. It is a first party. Like, even the minor first party games would still get dubs like Puppeteer did.
Okay.
So.
It probably goes without saying, but it's interesting looking back and realizing the reasons for stuff as an adult. When playing this stuff as a kid, I just always had to rationalize why some of my favorite characters had their voices drastically changed, since, we weren't always familiar with stuff like the concepts of voice actors or this and that, and sometimes we legit just thought these movies or games came into existence or whatnot. At some point, I just rationalized most of the character voice changes as puberty.
Yes, as for Dr. Nefarious, he's voiced by the Portuguese voice of Mickey. That being said, Theo, he also has a tremendous amount of experience playing.
I can imagine they cast him for a good reason for that kind of role. My question is, because I'm curious, since I'm about to mention the difference, does he manage to sound over the top enough?
Oh no, trust me. Rui Paulo has a tremendous experience playing over-the-top characters. Trust me, that's basically his specialty.
There are some cases where I understand, they changed the actor, like Mario, for example. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Charles Martinet as much as the next guy, but but to me, listening to his voice clips from the most recent games before he left the role, yeah, I can tell he was starting to really struggle.
I partially agreed with you, but I
voices.
can also tell you, I don't know if you actually have listened to that. I argue it was fine as Wario in the recent WarioWare games.
That's Wario
Okay,
compared to Mario.
No, I get it, but my point is that they probably could have still had him in some roles, just not all of them.
So, Pedro, this nefarious actor, you say he did Mickey Mouse. I'm curious.
He's still doing Mickey to this day.
Did he do Mickey for Mickey Unwrapped?
You're gonna have to run that by me one more time.
Is
What
that a
is that?
specific episode of the Disney cartoons?
Oh, Mickey
Well-
Unwrapped, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing to come out of the 90s when Disney did a rap album.
Oh no.
Oh no! If it's an
That
album,
cover
then
art
most
is
likely
real,
no.
by the way, the one that I just gave you guys.
Let me rephrase that. He did all of Mickey's on-screen appearances. Like, I'm pretty sure he didn't dub any albums. Unless, of course, the songs for any songs Mickey would sing in any movies, of course, or cartoons, of course.
You have to understand, Joe, that much like with stuff like, say, for kids doing, so album for songs based on the stuff that they create for their anime localizations. If there's stuff like dedicated albums for kids done in America, we normally don't really get those.
The
Maybe when
The beautiful thing about Mickey Unwrapped was that they actually did get some legit rap artists of the time to collab on this, including Tag Team for their cover of Whoomp There It Went.
I can imagine.
Next, you're telling me that they had the entire cast having to sing a Wu-Tang Clan song.
That would be something. Also, you weren't
be
kidding.
interesting.
This level does go on for a while.
We're
and
actually
from
almost
what
at
I've
the end. Basically, I'm just taking the longer route in order to sabotage turrets so they will not actually be too much of a hassle when the enemies inevitably spot me.
The level doesn't seem inherently bad, but it doesn't seem like it really mixes stuff up enough, so I can see how it would drag.
C-Tail, the reason I'm okay with something like Copley Productions and the Tales games using the same voice actors over and over is because it's actually very common in my country, and that's why PlayStation Portugal keeps using the same actors for various roles. Like it creates this, to me, in my opinion, it creates this it's like this family of people who keep themselves together and are constantly doing these projects because and their experience together allows them to do their job well. That's how I see it, at least.
I get it, but what my country instead tries to do is to give an identity to each character, so at the very least, even when recycling is inevitable, they bother to not have the same VA having to do for example, the main protagonist, just so that also in the eventuality of crossovers, each of them actually do stand out on their own, which, for example, what happened with PlayStation Stars Battle Royale.
Well, if it helps you, a common thing that Portuguese voice actors specialize in is range. So a lot of times my voice actors can very easily do very different voices to the point where you wouldn't be able to tell unless you know beforehand that it's the same actor.
Also, to talk briefly about also what's going on here, you might have noticed that I have a weapon that I haven't used yet, like a gadget, the Hypno Watcher. It's borderline useless, at least in my hands. I'm sure there are players who actually have managed to actually make it more properly, getting a good use out of it. The idea is that during a stealth section, you actually throw it out, an enemy will be lured by that, one of these smaller enemies will be lured by that, and they will be dizzied. The problem is that every time that I try to do it, I don't know what I was actually doing wrong. Maybe I was in the wrong place, or maybe the enemy will not get distracted that easily, but it never happens, unfortunately. So, again, alas. Anyway, we're actually done with the level, so let's see where the twist.
Right.
Wait a minute.
Excellent. If
Yes,
you can
here's your
do
twist.
it,
The big enemy is not the Kingpin, but Clank from the third game.
I wouldn't worry.
How are you alive, and why do you have a goatee?
Because he's evil, Jova. And remember, Jova, red eyes and goatee. That robot museum at the beginning was actually foreshadowing for this.
As usual,
Cute.
overestimated you.
Still, though, how is he alive? We literally killed him.
Hope you're
And because this is a Bond parody,
privacy.
Clank, despite everything, is still an idiot and leaves Clank to deal with the goons, which predictably goes as you'd expect. Well, mind you, you don't get to fight them, you just beat them off screen, which is very weird.
That's weird. Not even a quick time event.
Although this leads to something, again, about intermingling. Let's see what Qwark is up to.
Why is it that you don't need a breathing apparatus in the vacuum of space?
You know, that's the exact question the space nuns asked me after I
Space
saved
nuns?
them and the ship full of orphans from the space pirates and their giant
They're good friends of the cyber monks.
Space nuns.
and orphans. I was on routine patrol in the Delta sector when I heard the faint cry of a child. You're missing some great stuff here.
Alright, Qwark's actually is still reminiscing how the space graveyard happened in the first place, where apparently this is turning into a Flash Gordon episode. I guess it was inevitable at some point to actually happen, where the ships are in the thralls of the giant kudzu. That's what it's called, and you have to free the space nuns from its tentacles. Oh, the horror! Again, it's fine. It's nothing. It's definitely a bit of a step down compared to the opera, but it's fine.
A button to throw a heroic punch.
As for ours, since we tend to not really get a whole lot of, say, video game voice work compared to, say, the States, although that has been changing a lot lately. What we tend to do is that we have a load of native British actors doing the voice roles for stuff with accents from time to time. Although we do have a lot of expats living here. By that I mean people that moved to the UK for acting work, like mostly from the States and Canada, and that's how say if one of our voice acting groups is called on to do a game that requires a load of international representation, for the most part we either try and put on a convincing enough accent, or we just get an actual native who immigrated to the UK to handle the role. The most recent examples was in the recent, Hitman's 2 and 3, where they diversified the accents more from the 2016 game after that got a lot of criticism from the fans.
Also,
But I mean, having just Americans and British voices, no matter where you were.
The one major exception that I can think of for, well, it's been a while now, almost 20 years since that, but would be instead Final Fantasy XII, where technically the main cast and a lot of the minor characters were mostly handled by American VAs, like, Gideon Emery, not Keith Silverstein, but, people of that school of VAs, but specifically for the group of villains of the two main bad guys, Vane and Dr. Sid, and the Judge Magisters, they did get specifically theater British actors, who, as far as I know, don't think they did video game roles, before or since. So that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, and most recently, for that series in particular, there's been a load of British VAs involved in that since 2.0, although lately they have been incorporating more Native American VAs again in the most recent expansion, and we had a full British voice cast for 16.
So Qwark's helping out Space Nuns, but doesn't he know that the Battle Sisters can handle their own just fine in combat?
Well, not in this case, I'm sorry.
Damn. I guess standards fell to a bit of a low when they ran out of personnel.
And remember, this is entirely just a fantasy sequence that is imagining, so you have to take things with the quote-unquote creative license.
Although, speaking of the Battle Sisters, how would a Ratchet and Clank and Warhammer 40k crossover work, I wonder?
Not really. This franchise is very comedic in tone, while everything related to 40k is super serious to the point where it's the one that coined the term grimdark. Closest I can tell you to something remotely comedic are the Caiaphas Cain book series. But even that, it's more comedic in a Blackadder type of sense, where most of the comedy comes from someone dying very horribly and the main character being absurdly lucky. So,
I was kind of going to say, Warhammer 40k is one of those series that in-universe is serious, but the internet jokes about it so much.
Well, it also depends on the perspective.
It's supposed to be... Yeah, like, I guess one could argue Warhammer 40k could be seen as comically serious since, okay, I feel like there is some subtext with the fact that these people are fanatics and flipping nuts, essentially.
And
but they do technically get the jobs done. Yes, that too.
All in a day's work, ladies.
Well, again, it also it's a matter of perspective, Jova, because on one hand, again, this is applied mostly to the rulebooks and the video game adaptation. Again, so far we have to see yet a proper series. We'll have to see if that works out or not. But, for example, the faction of the Orcs has to use very thick Cockney British accent, hooligan-style British accent, and that is, combined with their behavior, tends to be relatively funny in how they actually properly behave. But in universe, they're anything but, because for the average Imperial citizen, they're a bunch of, walking monstrosities that they kill and maim you with tools that normally should not work. So again, perspective and everything. There is a way to make dark humor out of the situation, but ultimately, between that and Ratchet and Clank, the two things are incompatible.
The only last thing I'd like to mention about the previous topic is that since, unfortunately, unlike Jim Ward, the actor over here who plays Qwark is perfectly fine, so he still plays Qwark in Rift Apart. In fact, somebody else plays his dimensional counterpart in our dub. So basically, thanks to the voice actor still being fine, Captain Qwark and Captain Quantum are able to have two different voice actors, just like all the other dimensional counterparts. If I remember correctly, I think Captain Quantum's voice in the English dub also does Qwark in that little bit.
I don't remember that. Also this. Once you rescue all the space down, you have to actually fight properly the giant kudzu, and it's a good thing she is not here, because we had to perform some eye surgery. In the Qwark style, yeah. This also involves squeezing giant lemons that are here, because shut up. Here's the thing, that I think they did the same thing for Rift Apart for my country. I'll have to re-listen just to be sure, but...
probably.
The thing is that it's probably a kind of a miracle, and helped by the fact that Rift Apart was distanced from the 2016 remake, because one thing that I was going to mention for the movie, but as well to say now, is that because of the marketing of the movie, decided to go full hog on the School of Rome, as I mentioned, and also powered to hire a bunch of YouTubers for some minor role as well. That meant that only Ratchet had his VA returning. Everyone else was recasted with people that really were not fitting role. And so both Clank and Qwark's VAs were so pissed by the thing, especially because they were not warned about it, that they decided to basically quit, and not quit the entire job, but not wanting to voice the roles anymore. Thankfully, because enough time passed, they probably managed to bury the hatchet at some point, because they returned for Rift Apart, but they were actually very close to actually cause that much damage. Anyway, the point is that Qwark's fantasy has managed to actually unlock a conveniently operative giant platform that makes Clank giant again, meaning that he has a way to get out, which is an excuse to have another shooting segment like in Size Matters.
Okay, I just checked down the voice actors. No, Captain Qwark in Rift Apart is voiced by Scott White, whereas Zeke Alton plays his dimensional counterpart. Whereas, okay, Kid and his Kid McMarks, you know, both him and his dimensional counterpart are both played by Jess Arnell still. Huh.
I don't know what happened.
And one thing that I'm still blown away by is how Deborah Wilson manages to be such a convincing dimensional counterpart for David Case Clank. Because when I think a female version of Clank, I wouldn't think Deborah Wilson, but yeah, she does brilliantly.
Yeah,
Deborah Wilson, I'm trying to remember. But
Deborah Wilson from Map TV season
she
1.
They actually have put her in a lot of video games recently, like Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League and the Star Wars Jedi duology.
I'm surprised you're not familiar with her, Jova, since she's a, by this point, an African American comedian legend.
The name just hasn't come up much in my
You probably
mind,
you probably are familiar with her, you're just not recognizing the name. Let me get you some more.
Probably, yeah.
Anyway,
weird that Jim Ward fell off as Qwark in the series, but as for why just someone else...
Remember, Jova, in, forgot which specific year, 2020, he both got COVID and then was later diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so he retired from work, which is very understandable.
Okay. That is understandable. As for Jess Arnell sticking around, I'm not surprised. Jess Arnell's been a big name. Like, I mean, he's like Jess Arnell's like that kind of name where you can see him in small stuff, but he does make it to big stuff as well too. So
that's not the fact. It's just the fact that in Rift Apart, every dimensional counterpart in that game is voiced by someone different. So I'm wondering why Jess Arnell's Kid is an exception. That's what I'm wondering.
I'm guessing
find someone that would sound, enough like him. I don't know.
If I recall correctly, the joke is that Skid is practically the same person,
yeah, basically.
just with some slight variation. He is the one universal constant.
But yeah, basically, Deborah Wilson made her television debut in Mad TV, for which I'm familiar with. She's also a regular voice actress on Family Guy, so I'm sure you've heard her there at some point.
Probably.
Oh, she was in Star Trek: The Experience, the Klingon Encounter in 1998.
I think video game wise recently, I think she was also in Forspoken.
Right. She was in the Jedi Fallen Order duology.
And like I said,
I remember
that too. Yeah.
Amanda Waller in Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. Because this despite the fact that they already had an appearance for the character in the Arkham games, but that's besides the point.
She's also the voice of Devora in the Mortal Kombat animated films.
She also is the current voice of Daisy Duck in the Mickey Mouse Funhouse show.
Yeah. She's at this point she's basically a voice actress. I'm sure she maybe has like the occasional live action
video games, they actually have her mocap her roles.
Yeah.
So, and hey, for your enjoyment, Pedro, she will be in Death Stranding 2 on the beach.
I don't see a problem. Joe, but trust me, I've loved Deborah Wilson since Map TV. Trust me, I have no issues with that. Go on.
What I don't know is that is it like a cameo or like similar to Geoff Keighley's hologram in the first game, or is it like an actual proper character?
Considering Deborah Wilson nowadays is more popular as a voice actress than a live action figure, probably a role that has at least some amount of significance.
Anyway,
although to be fair, did she do motion capture for the Jedi game? Sorry,
she's credited as Doctor, just Doctor. Okay,
probably,
if it's just Doctor, then if it's just Doctor, then it might be just one. My guess is Kojima is a fan of hers, and he decided, hey, you want to be in my game? You just have to come into a 3D scanner.
A lot of people joke that Kojima finds people on social media by watching their movies and just decides to cast them in his games. Again,
that's not a joke to you. Actually, it's true. That's what he did to Conan O'Brien in the first game. Conan came in to visit his studio, and Kojima just casually asked him, "Do you want to be in the game? We have a 3D scanner there. We can immediately scan you, and you can be an NPC in the game."
Yeah, that's
nice. Studio in New York.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Remember, Kojima Productions basically got super accommodated by the US, because again, remember the whole thing was that Kojima quit / got fired from Konami, and so I get the idea. It was a case where American studios basically decided to put him in their graces by giving him all the commodities of the case. Remember, Death Stranding was heavily financed by Sony, and they allowed him to experiment with the same engine that Guerrilla used for Horizon Zero Dawn.
It's what I like to call the Mighty Number 9 effect. Not talking about how it turned out, but more so it was fueled definitely by people wanting to stick it to the company, which, okay, in this regards was deserved because Konami were like supervillain levels of terrible to their employees.
Well, again, it
most
seems that
notably Kojima.
specifically for Konami refugees, it worked out for the most part, both for Death Stranding and Bloodstained. The only one that unfortunately couldn't manage to get that kind of level on the long run, because he was the one that before was the creator of the Silent Hill games, but that's a story technically for another time. For the time being, we're actually done with the shooting section, so we're studying for the next part, where we see where Clank actually can lead up and if he can stop His Evil Twin. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
So yeah.